Welcome back. It's been a few weeks since the royal wedding, and the prince, along with his beautiful bride, Princess Cinderella, will be back in a couple of days. The king and the queen, however, are attending a beautiful presentation by the palace jester.
My son finally gets married.
Soon I'd have a grandchild. Oh, but certainly the wedding does provide security to King Lithiu's empire. And of course, an heir to the throne. Without pushing it, perhaps a spare. The prince and Cinderella have had the most marvelous time. The Captain Montgomery had sailed away with them to a secret location where the waters run blue and the skies appear to have clumps of white cotton. They dined on the beach by night and they played away by day. And soon the honeymoon would be over. Cinderella had to get her hair done. After all that fun in the water, she decided to get her hair fixed and perhaps get a color change. She went from vintage to grand. The first of 3 gift packages has finally arrived. Her name is Clarissa Langford. She was sent here by the Royal Organization of Handmaidens. They provide personal assistance to individuals of high standing, such as the Prince and Cinderella. Her duty is to serve and attend Cinderella at every waking moment. She is also known as the Princess Sitter. She is here to gently guide Cinderella in matters of royal etiquette, and also to refine her royal attitude. While doing that, she still has the duty of keeping the house in tip-top condition. She starts at the top and works her way down to the bottom, making sure every surface has a shine, just before the royal couple arrive. But then, she decides to have a cup of tea. That was her excuse. When no one was watching, she set the stove alight and it began to burn uncontrollably. The head chef did everything he could to put the fire out to no avail. This is because Clarissa Langford is none other than the handmaiden sent here by Princess Moya's mother. The original handmaiden was abducted by the ugly pair, and Clarissa Langford took her place to carry out the evil intentions of this horrible witch. You might remember that the prince came out at the wedding and pleaded with her not to take offense at the fact that he didn't marry Princess Moya. But she stayed behind and cast a spell on the household. So it didn't matter what efforts were made to put out the fire. The flames were not ordinary.
I'll take the happy out of your ever after.
This huge fire, with flames reaching to the sky, crackled, raged and popped, and Clarissa Langford fled the scene. She was nowhere to be found as the chateau burned and crumbled to the ground. In the early hours, the king's men raced on horseback to the castle to report to the king the outcome of last night's disaster.
Tell me, how bad is it? Oh, sire, everything we did, it burned to the ground. We did everything.
At this time, the royal couple had just arrived in town, and the limo driver was taking them straight to Lumber Castle by the order of the king. It was important. It was urgent. They couldn't go to the chateau, not just yet.
Whatever could be the problem? I'm so tired, and I was looking forward to going home.
Why, yes, of course. It must be important for my father to have requested us at the castle at this hour. But hopefully we shouldn't be long. Do hang in there, my darling. We should be home in no time.
The Prince Eden was so wrong. Not only did the couple walk into a royal meeting where they discovered that their chateau was burnt to the ground, the order was given that the Princess Moya and her mother be found and banished from the kingdom. This was a hard decision for King Lithio because he was good friends with Moya's father. Anyway, Cinderella was exhausted. She wasn't used to this sort of thing. She decided to take a little walk in the gardens on the grounds of the Lumber Castle. A walk in the gardens always seemed to make things feel better for Cinderella. When she lived in the cottage with her grandmother and she was feeling blue, she would go for a walk in the forest, pet a few animals, and all would be back to normal. Would this work this time? Perhaps yes, for as soon as she came under the drawbridge, she met with an unusual friend.
Hello, Cinderella. My name is Plush. Would you like to play?
Why, yes, certainly. You're unusually cute. Are you alone? And do you usually play around in the gardens?
I have 4 other friends. Would you like to meet them?
How are you doing that? It tickles.
Cinderella met with Plush's friends and they had a wonderful afternoon. And then they gave her a gift. This gift was green.
By now you do realize that you no longer live at the chateau. You will be returning to a castle in Swan Valley. When you get there, you'd find 3 green fairy buds. Be sure to tap on them, and they'll release 3 green fairies into your green garden. They'll protect you as long as you live there.
As Plush and her fairy friends had spoken, so it was.
There you are, Cinderella. I was looking all over for you.
I'm sorry. I went for a walk in the gardens. I didn't want to fall asleep at the table.
Anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm really sorry about everything that has happened. We will be returning to Swan Valley.
Okay.
There's a beautiful castle there in the mountains. We will live there, and it's safe. It's been in the family for years.
Eden, I can't help but feel like I brought this upon you.
No, Cinderella. Don't say it. I love you. No one else will do.
Finally home and exhausted, Cinderella was greeted by Rosemary Henchman and the 3 fairies. She was a bit sad. She went upstairs to find a comfortable place in the house to sit down and think about everything that had happened. You do realize that Cinderella lost everything in the fire. Her personal belongings. They weren't very many, but they were special. They had sentimental value. The little frame of her and her grandmother at the cottage, some personal artifacts, and so on. Everything was gone. However, she was determined to make this home. The fairy kept flying to and fro in the house to make sure that the promise was kept. Rosemary Henchman set them down to dinner, and also had already run a hot bath for them upstairs. She had worked with the royals for years. The food was delicious. The tub was nice and warm. The pair were very exhausted. It had been a long day. Not just physically, but emotionally. They were quite drained. The next thing to do was to get some well-deserved rest. As soon as they got tucked in, they both fell asleep. The prince quite deeply, for Cinderella not so much. She wasn't feeling quite well. She had a bit of a rough night. Perhaps it was the food she ate, or the long day she had, or the trauma of everything that had happened. Who knows? Princess Moya and her mother had fled. For hours they ran through the woods and ended up at an old abandoned cottage.
Mother, how on earth shall we live? We've lost our entire life of luxury.
Be silent, young girl. Look where we are. This cottage is said to have been abandoned. The one who lived here died of sadness. We shall hide out here until the search dies down. The plot thickens, and the tables have certainly turned. Princess Moya and her mother in an abandoned cottage, while Cinderella is asleep in a beautiful castle. The night was certainly rough for Cinderella, as is this morning. She has awoken to have the worst tummy upset she's ever had. It's time for the gift number 3, hidden in her tummy. Cinderella has no idea she is now pregnant. But she must get cleaned up and get herself ready to meet the people of the town who will be coming to the castle to congratulate them on their return from their honeymoon. While the butler plays a beautiful tune, the prince and Cinderella are up on the castle's balcony having a quick chat.
Cinderella, darling,
Yes, my love?
are you all right? You seemed quite restless last night.
I know, I had quite the tummy ache. I brought everything up from my dinner last night.
Do you think you might be pregnant?
Well, I don't know.
I'll have you visit the family doctor as soon as we're done with a balcony greeting for the people.
You're right. Thank you, darling. I do think I need to get checked.
And so it was. The kingdom was more than happy. The people of the town were so glad to see the prince and Cinderella together, back from their honeymoon. They were also excited that the Princess Moya and her mother had been banished. Now about the third present. It sure is hidden, but not to worry. We'll unwrap it in 9 months' time.